Okay, it's our pleasure now to bring in the Royal Editor at the Daily Mail, Mr. Russell Myers. It's nice to talk to you in person rather than through a different link. But let's start off with Westminster Hall. That's where the Queen's coffin is at the moment. You've been lucky enough to be in there and see it firsthand. Just describe the atmosphere, if you wouldn't mind.
Well, an extraordinary privilege today, and one of only a handful of journalists to be there. Less than 300 people, sort of members of Parliament from the Lords as well, and an eerie silence, I think, is the best way to describe the start. And then the unmistakable sounds of Big Ben, the gunshots ringing out in the distance. And we obviously knew the timings, but as you get closer and closer to the procession getting to Westminster Hall from that final journey leaving Buckingham Palace, you could hear the cries of the King's artillery, and I just thought, you're witnessing history. I mean, it's the magnitude of the event, and just standing a few feet away from the royals themselves, who looked completely anguished, and of course, why wouldn't they be? I think the enormity of what happened yesterday here, of the Queen's coffin coming back to London, resting in Buckingham Palace for the final 24 hours, where the family essentially have said their last goodbyes. They've passed her over to the nation now to say goodbye, and that's particularly poignant.
That is what was symbolic about today, wasn't it? The handing over from the royal family essentially to the state. So the next 4 days is about everyone paying their respects. You were up close to the royal family today. You talk about the anguish on their faces, and it has been gruelling for King Charles. Very
much so. I mean, his first few days have been jam-packed. I mean, he's started this tour of the nations, and I don't think really many people had an appreciation for what he had on his schedule, because he not only has to go and accept the messages of condolence, but he's making speech after speech. So I think he's handled himself amazingly well.
We jumped to his defence last night, didn't we? When people were giving him a spray over the pen thing, and we thought, hang on.
Well, this is a man who just lost his mother a few days ago, and he's taken on the enormity, even though he's been preparing for this role for many, many years, of course. You saw the raw emotion, and I was standing just maybe 10 feet away from him today, where he was leaving the hall, and we just had this incredible ceremony, and he gazed up to this magnificent roof of the Westminster Hall that's just been made since the 13th century. It's called the Roof of Angels, and you almost thought that he was not just the king, but a son in mourning for that moment. He just allowed himself that one moment of reflection, and then it's back to business for him.
There was an interesting picture today of Harry. Obviously, he wasn't wearing his ceremonial uniforms, which I'm sure he would have liked to, but he looked anguished today as well.
Yeah. I mean, I feel terribly sorry for him, because he sticks out even more by not wearing the uniform.
Yeah.
This is a man who has served his country gallantly.
He earned it.
And he's done a decade in the British Army, and for reasons that we could talk about all night, he's not been allowed to wear.
He's been lumped in with Andrew,
Yeah, it's particularly unfortunate for him. I mean, again, I think those pictures when he first arrived at Balmoral, he knew he was too late for to see the Queen in her final hours. I mean, he looked absolutely crestfallen, and I think the realisation that he's probably lost his only ally in this family at the moment. You talk about the rift being sorted, the brothers putting on a show on Saturday, walking out together in Windsor, and again today. But unfortunately, I think that this truce will be temporary in measure, I'm afraid.
Russell, I find myself really drawn to the Princess Royal, Princess Anne, as we see this ceremony. I was today, and as I saw the coffin close up, a couple of metres away, I felt myself being drawn to her again. She is such an incredible figure, and probably someone we haven't paid too much attention to, because there are other royals that do make the headlines more often. What role does she play in the King Charles era? Because they're very close, aren't they?
They are indeed, and I think that Princess Anne had always been sort of a chip off the old block of her father. She was into pursuit, she's out the outdoors life, she loved it.
I love that about her.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, the bit of rough and tumble with the boys, and certainly I don't think people really had an appreciation to the closeness that she had with her mother. Very, very emotionally involved. Her mother had a huge appreciation for how hard working she was.
Her only daughter.
Of course, and always in those lists about the hardest working royal, very, very stoic, steadfast. But again, and of course, why not? She looked absolutely devastated when she was in Edinburgh. But she has not left the Queen's side throughout all of this. I mean, we had heard in a statement yesterday that she revealed she spent her last moments with her, indeed her last 24 hours, and very, very fitting, I thought, that she was accompanying her on that final flight home.
So that was interesting. I read that, and so did she know then that? I mean, obviously she wouldn't be precise about it, but would she have known that this was quite possibly the last 24 hours?
Well, again, I don't think we'll know the detail of that, of course, will we? But quite interesting that she was there. Maybe just fortunate that she was there in Balmoral. But again, that closeness, I think that King Charles will rely on as well, because Edward has gone in a different direction. I think we'll see him doing much more with the Duke of Edinburgh Award, which has reached an international stage now.
It's big in Australia.
Very much so, and across Europe now, especially with the issues that we have with the war in Europe. That is something that they're looking to move towards. And I think that the issues with Andrew have been well discussed and torn over, and I don't think that the King wants to dwell on them too much.
Well, they're not close, right?
Well, they're not close at all. And I think he feels that and quite rightly, that he's brought the family into complete disrepute.
Does he just become a black sheep, I suppose?
Again,
I think he is
not if he can help
already.
Because he will pop up at every given moment. But I think the rest of the family would hope that he just sort of slides away into the background.
Russell, I'm fascinated at the women in the royal family. The Queen, I feel like, was a feminist in her own way. You just told us about the Princess Royal Anne and her stoicism and her hard-working ethic, but also Camilla, the rock for King Charles now. And we saw that with the Pen incident. We're fascinated by it because everything is so rehearsed, everything is so planned. And when you see those fleeting moments of unguardedness, they're wonderful, actually. Not being critical, but they're just wonderful to see. I think we can't say enough about her.
No, indeed.
I think she's
Well, you look at the causes that she's chosen very recent, and I've worked very closely on children's literacy with her. She's super passionate about it. And then she'd moved into the domestic violence sphere, and this is something that you would never expect a royal woman to tackle. But she'd had personal experience about it. She knew that people were suffering. She felt that she had a platform.
What was her personal experience?
One of her close friends had suffered domestic violence, and so she sort of realised, well, what can I do? There must be more women like this. And then she met a mother whose daughter had been beaten to death by her husband on an engagement, and then she said, you know what, I'm going to turn my hand to this. And she's made such a huge success of it. The conversation is much more mainstream now as it had been, but she has really made great strides, and spending time with her, I can't say enough about her. I think she's fantastic.